Hello and welcome to Inside Homebrewing. I'm Jay Thomas. And this is a pre-prohibition lager I found in the closet. It's been bottled since, well, for 10 months now, so it may be past its prime. It was real good 9 months ago. We'll see how it held up. Ooh, yeah. That's still pretty good. Not bad. The hops dropped out a little bit. But anyway, today's project, something I have never done before. Well, part of it I've never done before. I've never made a alcoholic ginger beer. This beer should come out at about 6% alcohol. What I'm going to do is I have the ingredients for this one. Everything I found online says just use sugar water and add ginger pretty much. But what I'm doing, I'm going to make this a real beer. I'm using 11 pounds of Pilsner malt, 1 pound of the Lyle's Golden Syrup will be added to it. I also have a half pound of Carafoam malt and 1/4 pound of acid malt, just to adjust the water a little bit, just so we get the right pH. I'm not going to use any hops at all. It's just going to be flavored with, I have some limes. I'm going to zest up these 8 limes and use the lime juice, add that to it. I also have 2.5 pounds of, I don't know if you can see that, but ginger root chunks. So I'm going to throw all the ginger root into the food processor. That's going to go into the boil for the last 10 minutes, and I'm going to shut it down, put the lid on it, let that sit for about a half hour or so before I cool it off and goes into the fermenter. And for the yeast, I got that yeast started going. I had some half price expired, the Denny's favorite, Y yeast 1450. And hopefully that's going good. And like I said, I always use the Eldorado Springs spring water. And we're going to go for it. And if the ginger doesn't come through enough, I have a great big bag of crystallized ginger. They say that you can add this. I could if it's not gingery enough, I'm going to try to steam some of this, just so it's sterilized or at least sanitized, and then add it to secondary fermentation. So anyway, I got the strike water heating up. We're going to go for this and get all these ingredients put together. So it's at 164 degrees, maybe a little warm, but start doughing in. It's going to be, the recipe calls for 152 degree mash. We'll leave that sit for 60 to 90 minutes. And once that gets going, I'm going to zest up the limes and chop up the ginger root. So that's all doughed in. I'm at 1.5 quarts per pound of grain. We'll get this all mixed together. Make sure there's no chunks down in there. Take a temperature reading. Should be about 152 degrees. 150, maybe 151. That works for me. Yeah, so I've come to the conclusion that zesting limes is a pain in the ass, and I've done a half-assed job at best. But so that's all I got out of these 8 limes. Anyway, I'm gonna get those cut up and I'll smash them to get the juice out of them. So there we go. We got just under 1 cup of fresh squeezed lime juice. and very little lime zest. So what I'm going to do is put the lime zest in with a bag of the ground up ginger root, and then it's going in for the last 10 minutes of boil. Then it's going to steep for a while. But then on that last, once I shut off the heat, I'm going to add the lime juice. We'll see what happens. So these are all rinsed off, and you know, I just rinsed off the dirt. So we'll see how well this food grater works for chopping them up. There we go. The chopping is much better than grating it. So what I'm going to do is put all this into a bag. Oh yeah. There we go. I'll get that all put in a bag and just show you what we got. So here's what I end up with. I got 1 cup of fresh lime juice. That's going to be at, when I shut the heat off, at flame out. And then I added the little bit of lime zest. I put that into a, it's actually a hop bag from the brew bag people. It's some big hop, I think it's for a hop spider or something. But anyway, it works real good. It's such a fine mesh. It's a real good screen. Nothing gets through, you know, except for the flavor. No particles will are going to escape the bag. So I use these for my fruit additions. Anyway, this is it's doing its thing, and we're at about 25-30 minutes now on the with the mashing it. Just clean up my mess as I go along, and I'm gonna have some ginger beer in a little while. So at just over 30 minutes mashing, it shows the temperature at 100 and just over 150. Take a pH reading. Let's see what that says. 5.5, 5.4, 5.3. So we adjust that for the heat. We're right where it should be. The acid malt did its thing, and I'm happy with where we're at so far. So I moved it outside. It just started boiling. Did have a slight boil over. I got a pre-gravity sample that's in the freezer cooling off right now. I am going to boil it for an hour, just to, even though there's no hops in it, I want to boil it for an hour just to get rid of any possibility of DMS in with this. It was 11 pounds of Pilsner malt. So got that boiling, and everything should be fine. The only question mark is, will the will the ginger have enough flavor to it for 5 gallons? We'll find out. So yeah, the alarm just went off. We got 10 minutes left on the boil. So here's the ginger and the little bit of lime zest. Just add that. The Lyle's golden syrup. Oh yeah, look at that. Try to get as much of that in there as possible. It's very, very hot. We'll call that pretty good. Give that a stir. It's going to go for 10 more minutes, and I'm going to add the lime juice and then just shut off the heat. I'll crank it up a little bit. Get that up to a boil again. Oh, you can really smell that ginger. That's awesome. I'll get that back up to a boil. I'm going to shut the heat off and leave it sit for about a half an hour. Just steeping in there. So that's been boiling for an hour. The alarm just went off. Just shut off the heat. I'm going to add the 1 cup of lemon fresh squeezed lime juice. Stir that up a little bit. Cover it up. I'm going to let that steep for about a half an hour, and then do the normal wort chill and get some, and add the yeast and get it in the ferment chamber. So the alarm just went off. Oh, that smells wonderful. Anyway, it's going to go from the boil kettle through the wort chiller and into the fermenter. Open up that valve. Open up this valve. It's going to drain any water that was left, any sanitizer that was left inside there. And then I'll take a gravity sample. That coil is sitting inside of 20 pounds of ice and 10 gallons of water. So the total volume is 10 gallons of water. It cools it down to 50 something degrees. Here it goes. Let that run for a second. Get all the sanitizer and bubbles out of there. That looks pretty good. Beautiful looking beer. Open that valve. Here we go. What I want to do, a little alcohol on here. Cover this up as much as possible. But let it free fall. It should be nice and cold. We'll immediately. Well, I'll take a temperature sample and read the gravity. So it's under 60 degrees. This is calibrated at 68 degrees. Oh yeah. Six to 8. We're going to call it 1.068 and adjust for gravity. Real good efficiency on this one. So here's the big test. Tasting it after the ginger addition. Got a snap to it. That ginger bitterness. That's pretty good. We'll see what it comes out like after it ferments. The back end has a nice ginger bite to it. So far, so good. So that's a done deal. It looks like we're right at about the 5-gallon mark. So now I'm just going to add the yeast and oxygenate it. Got that wiped off so it's nice and clean. This has been sanitized. Very nice. Oh. Oops, I forgot to take the magnet out. Now it's the magnet's in the bottom of the fermenter. So now just give it a shot of oxygen. There we go. You don't really need an oxygen stone. If you're pushing oxygen in there, it'll be fine. So I usually give it a minute or so, or 3, whatever. I just oxygenate it a lot, and I'll put it away. I'm going to use a top crop. A blow-off tube is going to catch the top crop. We'll see how well that works. I'll get this out in the ferment chamber here in a couple minutes and get it all hooked up and show you what that's all about. I want to reuse this yeast. It's Denny's favorite. I don't remember the number on it, but Y yeast. It's Denny's favorite, whatever that is. I like to use that for my pumpkin ale also. In about a month or so, I'm gonna be making a pumpkin ale, so I'm gonna want to reuse this yeast, save a few bucks on yeast. So everything is done and put away. I got this beer sitting here. That's a peach Roggen beer. Anyway, this one is all done. I got my note attached that I don't forget the magnet. So what I hope happens is the blow off comes up this tube. It's going to come down into this first mason jar. It's going to collect the yeast, clean, trope-free yeast on the bottom. Any excess will blow out into this jar that has some water in it. So hopefully in this jar I'll be able to catch the Denny's favorite yeast and use that for my next batch of beer. That will be my pumpkin beer. Anyway, that was a successful brew day. I did forget to add the whirlflack and the yeast nutrient on the last 10 minutes of boil, but that's the way it goes. So cheers to a good brew day. So the ginger beer, it's been 6 days. It's starting to settle back down. We never did get a blow off out of here to do any top cropping, but so I'm just going to switch that out for a regular airlock and then maybe try next time. But I'm going to I'll transfer this beer into a secondary, and then that way I'll and then cold crash it for a few days or longer and just get my yeast from that. I want to save this this Y yeast. I don't remember the number. It's Denny's favorite, whatever that is. I'm going to be using that on an upcoming pumpkin ale. Anyway, this is just moving right along. Everything looks fine so far. Like I said, the krausen has dropped. It didn't really have a whole lot, but that's dropped back down. We're good to go. We'll leave that sit for another week and then transfer it into a secondary and bottle it, or maybe keg it. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this yet. So the beer is all finished. Had an interesting turn of events. As you know, there wasn't any blow off at all, so I wasn't able to collect any yeast for top cropping. So what I did, at 16 days, I transferred it into secondary, checked the gravity, and also tasted it to see if it needed any. I thought maybe it might need some added. Some of my the crystallized ginger. I would add that to secondary. After tasting it, I decided it was perfect the way it was. So I just put it into secondary, let that sit, and then I was able to capture some fresh yeast, trope-free yeast off the bottom of the secondary. Anyway, it went a couple more weeks after that in secondary, cold crashed it as usual, and proceeded to bottle it. Got it right here. Turned out real well. Got a nice carbonation to it. It's pretty clear. Got a nice bit of a ginger aroma to it. A little bit of lemon flavor. Not really lemon on the nose, but ginger on the nose. A little maltiness. Came out at 7.1% alcohol. I decided to send it to the Brew Hut's annual homebrew competition. Have the results right here. It was, let me see, Ginger Rogers 34C experimental beer score. I think this is probably the best score of any beer competition I've ever been in. Scored 41. It went into best of show, took third place in best of show, took first place in historical and specialty, and was also chosen to be as the Pro-Am by Dry Dock Brewing. It says, I got this, I'll show you that. Dry Dock Pro-Am awarded to Jay Thomas for crafting a experimental beer named Ginger Rogers, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, got the score sheet here. Let's see what we got. Yeah. First one, a guy named Jose Quinillos, something like that. Jose. This gave me 41 points. Bottle inspection was okay. Aroma, low on malt, low straw. Hops, none. There was a no hop ginger beer, so of course. Fermentation, it just says none. It says his comment is clean. Other, big hit of ginger and lime. Appearance, it's kind of it says gold. It's checked gold. Clarity is brilliant. Head is white. Retention is kind of in the middle of the road. As you see, it's not a real long-lasting head, but the carbonation is good. Yeah, it's really good. And let's see what else he says. Retention, lasting, kind of. Okay, flavor, malt is low, light straw, hops none, no hops. Bitterness, just above low. Some bitterness from lime and ginger, it says. Fermentation, it says low, and then his comment is clean. Balance is malty, no hops. Finish and aftertaste is kind of dry, no comment. Then other, ginger and lime. Mouthfeel, kind of thin. Carbonation, kind of high. Warmth, right in the middle. And it says ginger. Creaminess is low to none. Astringency is low. And let's see. And then overall, classic example, or not to style. It's more towards classical. Flawless, not quite flawless. Wonderful, not quite wonderful. Then his feedback comments is, this is a really cool idea that was well executed. It is a bit dry, which is okay, but maybe consider adding maltodextrin or lactose. Great job. Okay, thank you, Jose. And then we got another one here. Lyle Hari, H-A-R-I, Lyle Harry, is a non-BJCP judge. He's a professional brewer at Dry Dock, and apparently they'll be brewing up a 7-barrel batch of my beer. Anyway, bottle he gave me a 40. The consensus score was 41. Bottle inspection okay. Malt low. Strong ginger with hint of lime. No hops. Fermentation clean. Other, didn't say, 8 out of 12. Color yellow, brilliant. White head, retention, middle of the road, 3 out of 3. Malt, low. Ginger flavor, little lime. Hops, no hops. Bitterness, no bitterness. Fermentation is at the end. Balance, malty. Finish aftertaste is dry. 17 out of 20 points there. Mouthfeel, body was kind of thin. Carbonation, medium. Warmth, low. Creaminess, low. Astringency, just above low. 4 out of 5. Classic is, then this don't really apply. Classic example. Flawless, not flawless. Wonderful, not quite wonderful. Anyway, his feedback, that was 8 out of 10. His feedback is great idea. Very well done. I like to see a little more lime flavor, but overall a great job. He gave it a total of 40. The consensus was 41 points. So there you go. Just Dry Dock Pro-Am. They gave me this. Dry Dock Pro-Am. So, yeah. So don't be afraid to experiment. You know, that was the first time I ever made a no-hop ginger beer. Most everything I read said to use, basically was fermenting sugar water, and I didn't think that was right, so I went with this, and came out really good. So like I said, don't be afraid to experiment and try new things. It could work out real well for you. Anyway. Brew what you like what you brew. We'll see you next time inside Homebrewing.